And welcome once again to Community Viewpoint. I'm John Pollock, your host for this segment. And as you can see there, that's me down there. And with me is Scott Lewis, our fire chief. And it says fire chief for Pahrump Valley Fire and Rescue. I got it, yes. And let's see, what is our topic this week? You want to show the, yeah, I know, show the banner, please. Keep calm and prepare for Christmas. So I know you've all gone to the stores in town, uh, Walmart, Home Depot, Smith's, Albertsons. Home Depot, for some reason, is you're bathed in batteries when you first go in there. They're real heavy on batteries this year. I don't know what it is, but everybody needs batteries. But it's Christmas songs, and we're taping this the day before Thanksgiving, so we're right on schedule. So it's that time of the year again, in the 30s at night, 50s in the daytime, and we're going to be looking at Black Friday and all this other sales coming up too. So in preparation for our Christmas season, we have some safety tips that we'll be talking to you about. And this is out of the picture, but this is one of my favorite ones. It's called a daisy chain, but it's a power strip, which we need a lot of times. There's a safety factor. It's an on and off switch here. It's grounded. It's UL approved. But what are some of the things that people do with them that make them bad?
So on the back, there's a series of instructions and data information. And what that does, it tells you exactly what the capabilities of this power strip are. And we do have to be careful, and not to sell any particular country or place them under the bus, but you should also be careful as to where these were manufactured. There have been instances and demonstrations where these power lines are cut, and you'll find that a very thin copper wires in there, and it's not the diameter of the insulating factor around it. So depending where you purchase them, and the cost of them should dictate to you the capabilities of the power strip. So if it's indicating it can handle commercial loads, it can handle exterior applications, then you want to make sure that everything about this gives you that impression, including the price.
They were on sale at Harbor Freight last year. I gave a whole bunch of them away for free for birthday.
That's probably been about 6/10 of our structure fires over the past year.
Oh, sorry about that.
But in this particular case, the application is totally inappropriate. So when we plug any kind of device into this, and then you have multiples feeding to another power strip, obviously it's basic electrical math. It can't handle those types of loads. And we see these used quite often on heavier appliances, such as refrigerators, space heaters, even microwaves. We've seen them just about any type of application in garages where people have a myriad of different type of electronics they use. And that you want to try to avoid those types of things. And in general, these should be used on a temporary basis where you can actually observe it. So for example, let's say you had a temporary, you're going to work on a computer and the cord wasn't long enough and you're going to use a power strip. Plug it in, plug your device in, have it in close proximity, you're observing it. When you're done, unplug it, and then unplug the device from the outlet.
Okay.
So temporary measures, extension cords and things like this should never be used as permanent wiring. So if you know you're going to have something that's going to be operating for an extended period of time, have a certified electrician come out, add an outlet to where you need it so it can perform to its best function, and it also ensures your safety.
So when I came out here, I had a new home built, and it was up to code. It was built in 1999 after all the codes were put out there. I think it was 98. Mm-hmm. You could do everything you wanted. But I have a refrigerator in the garage, and when we have a spike, a lightning or something, or the power goes out for some reason and comes back on, I usually go check out in the garage for that refrigerator that's out there because it's on a ground fault. And I check on that because it's a safety feature because you're not in a garage all the time. So you're not there, just like you're talking about the The power strips, the ground fault interrupter is there for safety reasons too. Just like the ground fault interrupters are always in the kitchen, are always in the bathrooms.
Where there's water.
Yes, yes.
So that's what the GFI's function, but you also want to make sure it has a surge protector. So if there is a surge due to a power drop, a near brownout, or possibly a lightning strike where there's an instantaneous loss of power, but then it reconnects, you want to make sure your appliances are safe. The other thing too is, and this is called resistive heating, a lot of times we'll go into an application and see a cord wrap something similar to this, super tight, with zip ties on them. So this can cause resistive heating, and where we've seen this often, we've had some creative people where they use a hose holder in a garage and they'll wrap their extension cords around it. So they pull off what they need and plug in one end and have the power going through that and then power whatever device. The problem is it causes resistive heating in there. And next time you're down the fire station, I'll show you what that looks like. But you'll actually see where the line degrades inside the insulation, and it looks like zebra stripes. And that's actually a breakdown of the wiring occurring. And a lot of that time, that's from resistive heating.
That takes me back. I've forgotten a lot of this since I was in the steel industry working as a journeyman with the electrical field too. Yes, you're absolutely correct.
And then on these, so we could, this
Go
is
ahead.
just a show in itself. But on these, we can get series arcing where we'll have something plugged in and either the inside or the actual plug itself is starting to degrade, and you won't get a complete connection, so there'll be this little arc between there, and that's called series arcing, and that will actually get to the point where it can melt this and degrade the entire area or the power strip in general. We were at a commercial store, I want to say it was about 30, 45 days ago for that type of fire, and it was placed behind a large rack, but this entire power strip burned. And if it had been closer to combustible materials, it would have been a full-blown commercial structure fire. Instead, there were metal racks, which is the only thing that helped prevent that type of fire from occurring. And it was out of sight, out of mind. So they couldn't see that it was actually failing.
Out of sight, out of mind, unfortunately.
Yeah.
That's true a lot of times, yes.
And the next thing with these is we don't want to place them underneath throw carpets or
I
anything
forgot to
along
bring
those
a
lines.
carpet.
Or simply even placing them on a bed where some bedding or pillows may be placed over, because that can retain the heat as well.
Now you want to look at if it's on the floor, a tripping hazard and stuff, but
Absolutely.
what's the worst that can happen? You could have a fire.
Right. And so just by nature, we want to say, oh, this is too short a cord for my application, so let me plug it into this one. So we want to get the appropriate size.
And that's why I brought these out
Yes,
here to
it's
begin
a great
with.
example.
Right. So, very good point. You can go to the schools and teach the kids that. Do you do that?
We do. It's part of our fire prevention, but actually we aim most of this type of incidents to the adults. It's very rare that the kids utilize this stuff. But we see this not even in residential, but commercial applications. So when we do our fire inspections, it's one of the first cautions that we give. Please don't plug in everything and then leave it like that. But it's a common practice, unfortunately.
Wow, interesting. So let's look at some of the other things. There are other things that we have to watch out for the Christmas time. Let's say watering your tree. Scott was just asking if they still sell live trees in town. I don't know anymore.
I haven't seen them, but in the event that you do decide to go up into the wilderness and cut your own tree, make sure that you keep it fresh. When you bring it back and place it to your stand, you want to cut off at least a half to an inch off the bottom.
Yes.
That allows it to absorb the water. You want to make sure you water it every day, at least check the level. And of course, we want to vacuum up all those needles and remove them.
Keep it away from any heaters, portable heaters. Keep it away from a fireplace.
Candles.
And the candles, yes. And
Even kids, the small kids, fall hazards. We've seen trees actually toppled and injure kids or pets, things along those lines. Make sure the stand is appropriate size for the height of the tree.
oh my God, yes. Yes, that's very important.
And LED lights. If at all possible, incandescent produce heat. That's the way they operate. LED does not. They don't produce a lot of heat. So therefore, they're a better application and are more efficient.
Going back, we used to have the ones that screw in. They used to have a little tube with colored water.
Exactly.
And it would heat up and then it would bubble.
Yeah.
And that was the heat that made it bubble, and you're causing heat. And then if that broke, you could short it out, and we never lost one. Though.
Yeah.
We're still here. That takes me. I was trying to look for pictures of those. I couldn't find them. Ben, you would have seen that on the camera.
And as soon as possible after Christmas, obviously we want to
Oh,
remove the tree, place
yeah.
it to a safe area outside, and have either trash collection or take it to the landfill for repurposing.
Or the cooperative extension, Dandelion and Calvetta. I'm sure Heather is going to be chopping them up again there.
So there's lots of good applications for those used trees.
And keep the wrapping paper away from the trees, from electric heaters, your furnace or your fireplaces, because the paper is, how do you want to say it, paper thin? It's about half the thickness of regular paper that I have over here.
Right.
It's very cheap, and it comes from that country that those power
Or
strips
one
came
of those several small countries.
Yeah.
Yeah, so one large and several small. But you also brought up a great point in the beginning, is that our temperatures are dropping. And so the use of space heaters in close proximity to the combustibles is occurring quite frequently now. We've already had several fires that possibly were related to use of space heaters and an overloading electrical circuits. So in most of our manufactured dwellings, those circuits can't handle extensive draw. And so we have to be careful where we're placing those in that also may be serving things like refrigerators, ranges, microwaves, things like that. So get to know your structure. And also, because they're usually transferred from one location to location, it's a good idea every few years to have an electrician come out and just make sure that those connections within the walls are still safe. A lot of times through motion or movement, they'll loosen up. And that will in turn cause that series arcing that we were talking about, where someone all of a sudden will see a flame develop at their wall outlet, yet nothing's even plugged into it. Or maybe there is something plugged into it that's actually
Then
drawing.
you know that shouldn't be happening.
Exactly. Yes, that's a bad thing.
That's a bad
It's an
thing.
indicator.
Yeah, so we were at, we're almost out of time already. Do you have a few more minutes?
I have as much time as you need me.
All right, we'll do a second segment today, but so we're just about done for today's segment, and we won't talk about power strips on the second section over there. But I want to thank you for stopping by, and you out there for not having fires. So we'll see you next segment. And welcome back to Community Viewpoint. I'm John Pollock, your host for this second segment with Scott Lewis, our fire chief. And today's topic, once again, will be, let's put the banner up there, and we've got that, keep calm and prepare for Christmas, ladies and gentlemen. So let's talk a little bit more about the perils of Christmas time, but the joy of Christmas too. But there's a safety factor involved for all different ages. If you're a toddler, if you're middle age, or if you're the older people too. What comes to mind is Christmas Vacation with the cat underneath the chair. There was a cord under there, and then you heard it go ring. They moved the chair. There's an imprint of a cat. So watch your animals. Be careful. Check the cords. I'm sorry, but I did love that movie. Check if there's any fray in the cords. Make sure, and if they're old, oh my God, if they're old lights, just throw them away, because the LED lights are so cheap, and we're just going. What the other lights were straight 120 volts, because this is 5 volts usually.
The LED?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's a lot easier to be safer with the LED lights. Plus, you could do so much with them on the tree or in the house. So you have a little, as the old people would say, a little clicker that gives you different colors and whatnot. So, and they're relatively cheap too. So that's something to look forward to.
And a lot of trees already have them affixed. So the new purchases of trees is simply assembling it, placing it into its sections, and then plugging them in. Others, you still have to go back and string them. So before you do string them, you want to make sure there's no cuts or deviations into the power cords. Just make sure that everything's in good shape.
I think it was the 60s or the 70s. Sorry, the aluminum trees were out.
Yeah.
My dad had one of those, and that thing is really dangerous too. And it had one of those rotating stands also, and it had lights on the side, and it was just a monstrosity. But he was so proud of it. Oh, and it had the glass little balls on there too.
Yeah.
That's something I was going to talk about. You really don't need those anymore. I grew up with those, but they break when you have little kids or animals, and that's a hazard right there. You don't want to go to the emergency room with some serious cuts from those.
Do you remember tinsel? Tinsel used to get caught in some of the electrical connections and pose a problem.
Oh yeah, that's been a while too. Yeah, they're taking me back. I do
You
remember
just
all
had a
that.
flashback, right?
Oh my God!
That
Yeah.
and Cousin Eddie arriving at your
Oh
house.
my God! Yes.
Yeah.
So those are some of the things that we should watch out for. Not to say that don't have Christmas. It'll be better if you don't have Christmas, but have a safe Christmas. And we have the tips for you that that are easy to go by, and so you'll live longer. So you're here for next year to see us possibly, or maybe I'll just run a rerun next year. Excuse me. Another thing here, even though that the weather doesn't get that cold here, I have down here detach hoses from spigots on the outside of your house, or you have a vacuum brake, it's called also. So when the pressure is off of your hose, when you shut the water off, the water sort of relieves itself.
Yeah, drains out.
Yes, so and make sure the vacuum brakes are working also.
This is usually the time of year we'll get a number of calls to respond to properties where the well house or a fracture of a water pipe due to the cold temperatures, and we'll start flooding the property. So those are the things that we'll get involved in as well to secure that in the absence of the homeowner being on location.
I tried enclosing it cheaply years ago, but I have some bales of straw around it now, and that keeps the wind from going underneath it. And naturally, I have the bladder covered, and the piping is wrapped, and I have heating tape on it. So I have all of that, and that I've never had a problem with it since I've had the straw there for some reason. So that might be a tip for you also. Be prepared for a kitchen fire. We've talked about that in the past. One of the easiest things to do is keeping all the your pots, the handles facing in, especially if you have kids. I always have a fire extinguisher above the kitchen range and oven, and I also have what do I have over there? Oh,
So
I don't have the smoke alarm right above the kitchen.
that's good, yeah.
Yes.
I would just caution people from placing the fire extinguisher directly above the range, because more often than not, when you have a stovetop fire, that's immediately where the flames go. So if there's a closely located pantry or closet, just on the inside of that door. And the reason being is so you still have easy access, but you want to make sure that nobody gets injured trying to reach it or try to, especially with loose clothing, long hair. There are usually issues that we run into. If there is a stovetop fire, simply remove it from the heat or turn the heat off, place a lid over it, just stand back. Don't throw water. Don't
I was
throw
just gonna
salt.
say that,
Yeah,
yes.
don't throw those things because it's unnecessary. Removing the heat will remove that important part of the triangle.
And if it's in the oven, close the door.
Close the door, turn it off.
Yes.
And still call us, though. Call 911. That way, if there's any issues, we can come out and resolve them for you.
And then you'll tell them if the food is still edible.
Yes, yes. So if you discharge a dry chem, there's the dinner. It's gone.
So anyway, another one, to don't use a deep fryer indoors, or many times outdoors. I've had a commercial with William Shatner for State Farm a few years ago.
Yeah.
And I think he threw a frozen turkey in the pot outside, and that's the last thing you want to do. And he had an overhang on his porch, and it splashed, and the flames went up, and well, Captain Kirk was all right, but he got this point across. Those are very dangerous.
It's the biggest challenge is displacement issues. So if you fill it up to the top or near top with the cooking oil and it's superheated and you introduce a turkey or anything else that you're going to deep fry, you displace that liquid has a tendency to come out, right? And it'll go right down to the open
And the
flame.
flash point, yeah.
Exactly. So you automatically have an incendiary fire, which can cause great damage and injury. And so you want to avoid that at all times. Keep it away from everything related to the house. Keep it in a safe area.
God, yeah.
Displacement is, again, a big part of it.
And also the propane tank, you want to keep a good-sized cord there. Usually you'll have a cord that's, 6-10 feet?
Yeah, you want to try and keep the tanks or spare tanks away from any open flame.
Spare tanks too, yeah, they'll go up real easy.
And that's the other thing, coming back to the kitchen that you mentioned too, is congregate activity in the kitchen. The more people you place into the smaller environments, it's the greater the chance of a disaster happening. Oven doors being pulled, food being removed, kids coming in, touching the hot surfaces. As you mentioned, touching the cooking material or the pots and pans that are on top of the stove, knocking to the floor, burn and scald injuries.
You don't usually use the back burners, but if you can, you keep the handles back.
Well, trip and fall are one of our number one types of calls during the holidays. And it's mostly because of too many people in an area, or they're starting to place material into that same area.
True, yes. Invest in a carbon monoxide detector. Besides the smoke detector, that's working.
If you have propane service to your house. If you have an all-electric house, the chances of propane is greatly reduced unless you have an attached garage that would allow fumes or something like that to come into the residence.
That's where we keep our propane tanks.
There you go.
So if there's a fire at ours, you know where they're going to be.
Yeah, where not to go, right?
Yeah. They're all on one wall.
Yeah.
The whole wall
So
going.
we know to avoid that wall.
Yes. So turn off the lights and other electronics before going to bed, or invest in a timer or 2 or 3 throughout the house to make sure that people think that you're in different places in the house. So a timer is the best thing to do.
Use decorative LED candles versus the real candles. That way, if you do leave the area, you don't have to worry as much.
True, and they have candles, LED candles that look like regular flames too.
If you're going to use your fireplace, make sure that the flue is open. Make sure it's been cleaned if you're using ordinary woods. Also, you want to make sure the screen is closed so that if embers are produced or any kind of material pops out, even the Duraflame logs can cause those pop-outs when they hit an air pocket. They'll send the material out. So no combustibles on the floor in front of it, carpets or anything along those lines.
No.
Or pets or kids.
Yes. Invest in power and multiple power backups. They said flashlights, we've got those, but they said piles of batteries. So it looks like I have to go to Home Depot. Lanterns, which I have some for camping. Candles, I have a few. I don't have too many of those. We even have a generator, and that's my wife wanted that for the well house in case we had a power outage that lasted more than a day or two. She's thinking of the horses, not me, but the horses.
Making sure the horses have water.
Yes.
Yeah, it's a good practice.
Yes, so make sure you have we had an electrician come out and put a, whatever you want to cross over to flip it off the regular circuit. So you could
switch.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a transition switch.
So you can't screw it up. There's only like 2 or 3 outlets that it services, which is good. So safely maintain your outdoor decorations, check your cords, which we've talked about, and create and practice an emergency escape plan. And I don't know if people do that. I know you teach that.
We do. We actually, it's a reinforcement tool to the kids during Fire Prevention Week, which just occurred this last October. And so we challenge them to go home and create a plan and exercise the plan with their parents or guardians and make sure everyone's best prepared. It seems to work. I mean, I've had a lot of kids come up, or actually the parents come up and say, little Johnny came out and told us that we're not doing this right.
They shamed them.
Like that. They shamed them, I guess, yeah. But it's all for the right reasons, and obviously, especially in today's environment, fires are so fast-moving based on the materials inside houses.
And one last thing, if you're going away someplace, go away, but don't talk about it until you get back on social media or anything. Because we have a lot of people, theft here, but it's all year round too. So
Well, and if you do go away, real quick, if you have someone you truly trust or have
a neighbor,
a neighbor or something like that, or a responder, notify the sheriff's office who has a key. So if there's an alarm activation or something else, we don't have to break a door.
which we do. So we've got that covered. My wife is very critical about that, just like I know your wife is too.
Yes.
And my God, we're out of time. We don't have time for another segment. All right, we'll see you next time. All right. Thank you.